Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, keynote speaker, media entrepreneur, and retail advisor. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, Rob Dunlap, Generative AI Practice Leader, IBM, explores how AI can offer retailers a genuine ability to revolutionize their business processes and help drive leaps of productivity across various aspects of their business, including personalized recommendations, predictive inventory management, automated customer service, and intelligent fraud detection. Rob and I will explore the evolving power of AI to augment human expertise, reduce costs, and create seamless, unified experiences. Let's listen in now. Rob, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Michael. It's great to be on with you.
Well, it was great to share the stage with you at Retail West as you were dropping the knowledge amongst the folks in Vancouver. But I wanted to get you on the mic so you could share the wisdom and the artificial intelligence farther afield on the pod. So thanks for joining me. Where am I finding you today?
Today I am in Toronto, but don't hold it against me, Mike.
That's okay. I'm here too. Are you based here? Is that where you're from? What's your backstory?
I am. Yeah, no, I am. I live in Toronto. I've lived in Toronto basically since I came out of university.
Oh, fantastic. Now, what do you tell the audience, the listeners, a little bit more about who you are and what you do for a living, and how you got to be you?
I've been working with IBM for the last 12 years in a variety of different capacities. But all of them basically focused in the combination of artificial intelligence, customer service, general operations, and automation, and how we bring all of those capabilities together to transform organizations and transform the experiences that they provide to their customers. So that's really from a focus professionally perspective. That's my area of focus. Mm-hmm. It's what I feel really passionately about, and it's the value that I try and deliver for our customers.
So did you always, how would you describe yourself? Are you a computer guy? Are you a strategy guy? Are you a tech guy?
I'm definitely a tech guy by origination. I'm an engineer and started my career in a more technical focus. But, as I was seeing the way that we could serve our clients through consulting at IBM, I became very passionate about not only how do we implement solutions technically, but also how do we use those technologies to translate them into positive business outcomes and impact, and obviously the customer experience. So, as my career has progressed, I've really been focused kind of in both domains, both technically, how are we delivering solutions, but also how are we actually building them to be delightful experiences and outcomes.
I would say 100% of the listeners know the three letters that are IBM. I actually work with IBM on the consulting side when I was at Hudson's Bay back in the late 90s, early 2000s to launch Hudson's Bay, HBC.com. But I'm not sure everyone listening knows the contemporary IBM, like scope, scale. There's been a big transformation over, I guess, my career of what IBM does and who you are. So talk a little bit about the contemporary thing or the contemporary company that IBM is.
Sure. The first thing that will shock lots of people is that IBM is not a computer company anymore. Most people, their association with IBM is the personal computer, and obviously that's an area that IBM was, a major player in for a long period of time. But today's IBM is very different from that. We obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, we have a more traditional mainframe and large-scale computing business, but really our two focus areas as an organization are in software and then also consulting. And in software, the two areas that we really seek to be famous in, to have the best technology in the world, are in providing hybrid cloud solutions and also artificial intelligence. And then in consulting, we implement and provide strategy for and manage the services of a wide variety of different technologies, but also we have a focus on helping our clients take advantage of cloud technologies and also artificial intelligence.
Well, when I think of IBM, it's I don't know if I'd call it ironic, but it's certainly the case that IBM with Watson and Big Blue, you were pioneers in AI going back to whatever the OG days look like. So let's dive into some AI and let's talk about it a bit. What does the landscape look like? Like, if you're I talk to retailers all the time, and they're on a various spectrum of experimenting with to all in with AI. But when you think about its impact over the years and lately with Gen AI on the retail landscape, what are the key challenges that it helps retailers address today? We'll get to talking about what it's going to do tomorrow, but let's talk about today.
So I think even before how retailers are using it, I think the thing that we need to recognize is that AI is not something that is super new, but the generative AI era is new, and that's changing the way that we frame up and we see use cases. Lots of retail organizations will be super familiar with and will have experimented with and even built into production lots of traditional AI use cases. They may be using machine learning to forecast demand. They may be using it in their supply chain to try and optimize that. They may be using more traditional conversational AI solutions in customer service so that they can serve their customers in an automated way and a 24/7 always present way. But obviously, with generative AI over the last 2 years really capturing the attention of the world, there's a whole collection of use cases that either are now accessible because of generative AI, or they're easier than they ever were before, potentially more impactful than they ever were before. And so the biggest use case that we often see with organizations is in customer service. Those old, traditional clunky chatbots were a lot of effort to try and train. Most people, sometimes they would have a great experience, but sometimes if the chatbot didn't know the answer to their question, it wouldn't be such a great experience. But when you apply generative AI to that, you can cover so much more ground around the nature of questions that you can answer, the data that you can bring in to answer those questions, and you can provide, a much better customer service end to end. And that same pattern of being able to basically expand the focus and capabilities of AI is applicable to demand forecasting. You can take in more data and understand it better. It's applicable to supply chain management. There's a whole, area of time series models and other types of models that are going to transform, not just the natural language processing, but other types of AI. And so all of that is really exciting in terms of its applicability to the retail space.
As you think very deeply about the impact on business, and you mentioned customer service, my mind immediately goes to the recent incident case, I don't know what you want to call it, with Air Canada, where a chatbot made a promise it couldn't deliver. And then the courts basically decided that was as good as a real person, Air Canada, saying it wasn't. Is that a risk that's very front of your mind? Is that something that's been a speed bump for the adoption of AI? What do you make of incidents like that or cases like that? Are they edge cases, as you might say, in the engineering world?
I think that I'd kind of acknowledge that this isn't just a problem with AI. In other words, providing an incorrect answer or inaccurate information is something that obviously a human can do. It's something that a more traditional digital solution could do, and it's obviously something that an AI solution could do. And I think in each of those instances, we as organizations, we have to kind of engineer processes and technology in order to make sure that we're most accurate to not have any kind of negative impact on the customer. With AI, it's definitely more, it's a different challenge than if it's just a human or it's just a digital solution.
I guess you can get into trouble a little faster, I suppose, right?
And the nature of the technology is that it's predictive. And so you may not know, for example, why a particular answer was being predicted. If it didn't properly understand the nature of the question that the customer was asking, it may provide a wrong answer and actually may feel very confident in that answer, or it may have a high level of confidence statistically in that answer, I should say. And so that's something that we need to engineer around. I think that generative AI has brought that more front and center because most people who have interacted with, a Chat GPT or a Gemini or some of our IBM technology, a standard chatbot, you potentially have experienced what people call a hallucination, right? Being provided with an inaccurate answer. And so that's not a huge problem when it's a customer service experience that's kind of like a Google search. You may be very prepared for that. But if it is an answer coming from, a customer service bot for a particular organization, they need to have a whole nother level of confidence in the accuracy of those answers. And so that's something that we definitely need to engineer in terms of trust and accuracy and comprehensiveness within the solutions that we build for our customers.
It's an interesting point because it reminds me of the discussion I had a couple of weeks ago. I was in one of those self-driving cars and in Vegas. And on the trip to Vegas, I took an Uber with a real person, and they were a terrible driver. I was like, I hope I make it to the airport. And people are saying, weren't you worried about being in a self-driving car? I said, well, on the balance of probabilities, I think I'm better off with a self-driving car because there's more thought that goes into that. And just as you were talking about, people can make mistakes too. I guess it's up to the organization to own the issue and to just kind of keep a close drive on it. Now, question for you, as you interact with many, many retailers and in many sectors, and there's some obvious use cases, some of which you've articulated. There's some unobvious use cases. But when they sit down in front of you for the first time or get you into a room and say, listen, we got to solve this issue, and we think AI is the solution. What's the most pressing issue that retailers are trying to solve or trying to solve for?
Definitely. Definitely the customer service and customer access is an interesting one that everyone is interested in. So, for example, retailers today, they struggle to differentiate themselves, or they're constantly looking for ways to differentiate themselves against their competition. They want to be able to engage with their customers in ways that are going to feel personalized and are going to be, encouraging and leading to high conversion for their products or offerings. And the generative AI capabilities and AI capabilities overall provide a really game-changing toolkit to be able to do that. So, by way of example, Michael, if you're being if a retail brand is reaching out to you and they have some data on you, not only are they going to send you potentially a specific offer based on the data that they may have for you, or they may blast you with a traditional campaign email or other form, but they can now customize all of the content within those emails, within that campaign specific to you. They can ingest far more data that is specific to you in order to understand you better. And all of that leads to, and then when you actually come in and maybe you have a customer service request of some kind, because they understand you better and because they've ingested so much more information about the organization itself, they can also serve you better. So customer service domain is definitely one that I think is still really, really important. The couple that I mentioned around more of the retail operations side of things, I think are also important, whether that's applicability to supply chain, demand forecasting, et cetera. We're also seeing some interesting patterns where how do we build kind of the augmented sales experience of the future? Obviously, today, your digital experience and your in-store experience for basically every brand are quite separate. Best case scenario, maybe the online experience is able to help you find something in store. Sure. But we envision a future too, where you can start your digital experience, maybe with an AI shopping assistant on your mobile device or on the computer. You can look through different products, identify what you might want, and then you can actually carry that kind of hybrid or immersive experience into the store and interact with the store in a similar way. And so I think that that's a really interesting area in terms of customer service overall and experience that is going to grow as we progress.
We've been referring to retailers as a large homogenous group in this conversation, but let's unpack that a little bit, because of course we all have listeners that could be small independents, mid-size, all the way up to the large scale. Now, you at IBM would probably be doing business more with the mid to large retailers, but and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But generally, do you see Gen AI and its various, whether it's as you said, whether it's Gemini or whether it's ChatGPT, do you see that as an asset to all retailers at every size? And how do you think of that when you talk to retailers, or when some of the smaller retailers say, listen, I don't have the assets of the big players, but I think I can make use of AI. How do you think about that?
The way that I think about it, and by the way, this isn't specific to retail, I think this is almost a pattern across all industries, is that the value of these technologies is generally, proportional to their impact. That just kind of makes logical sense. If you have more customers, if you have more stores, the opportunity may be higher. And the cost of entry, if you will, is higher earlier. So I think what we're going to see is more medium to large retailers, and this is also what I'm seeing in my interactions, make earlier investments to understand what's the nature of the AI, what's the nature of how AI is going to transform my business. And they're probably going to be a little bit further out ahead of some of the smaller retail organizations. But the really remarkable thing about generative AI, Michael, is that it is also a very democratized technology. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's interacted with a chatbot has experienced that. You don't need to be a data scientist, for example, to customize a chatbot for your individual organization. And all of the IT companies, IBM included, are coming out with all these tools to build your own custom AI solutions in an easier and easier way. So I expect that over the course of the next few years, certainly there may be leaders in the medium to large space, but even small retailers are going to have access to these same capabilities, and they're going to be able to build custom solutions for themselves. The other thing that I'd highlight is generative AI has the potential to really transform, from a digital perspective, what the front door for a lot of retailers are too. We obviously, the front door today for everyone is, the Google search. And how do you ensure that, whether it's from advertising, marketing, or just the general ability of your digital presence to be on Google, how do you ensure that when someone comes in for a product there, you are raised up to the top? Same sort of pattern obviously exists within Amazon and other areas that people start their retail journeys on. And so the generative AI conversational interface may start to transform that. That's certainly part of the vision for, the next version of Google through Gemini, or you think about organizations like Perplexity AI and the vision that they're trying to bring. And so retailers also need to be thinking about, how is my digital front door transforming, and how do I ensure that I am building the AI capabilities and partnerships, et cetera, in order to ensure that I keep the same level of brand and organizational prominence that I have today, and of course, best case scenario, even grow it.
Now, you've mentioned Gemini a couple of times from Google. Are you as IBM agnostic as to the tool, or do you have your own tool, or do you have versions of different tools? Like, what do you recommend, or is it a recommendation based on the need and the occasion? How do you guys approach that as IBM Consulting?
In IBM Consulting, we are very much agnostic. IBM Technology is a really important and major partner for us, and our IBM Technology brand has watsonx models, which are specifically kind of geared to the enterprise, are trained on safe content, are best in class from you being able to actually customize them for your specific use cases. But across IBM Consulting, and specifically my team, we're also implementing solutions on OpenAI and Azure AI. We're doing the same thing with AWS on Bedrock and using some of their models as well. And then also with Google and even other organizations outside of that and other ecosystem partners. It's such an important strategy for us in IBM Consulting, so that we can adapt to, at the end of the day, what our client preferences are, right? What our customers are, the commitments that they've made, the technologies that they prefer, and then build the best-in-class solution for them.
You and I met in Vancouver, which is a real hotbed of AI development for small indie startups. Do you keep track of that as well? Do you kind of keep your hand on the pulse? It does seem like it's the race of the big three that are dominating Gen AI, but are there small up-and-coming players that you're keeping an eye on?
I definitely try to. The interesting thing about this space, I'm sure you feel the same way, Michael, there's just so many of them. It's impossible to keep a tab on everything. Mm-hmm. I think when we look at the industry generally, we're in a place where there are major bets being made by the big technology providers around the core tool layer. Whether that's
they're building. My God, Rob, they're building nuclear plants to power it.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
These guys are putting, it's probably off the topic of what we're talking about today, but the amount of energy these Gen AI models can use, these guys got more money than even we can imagine together, and they're building they're redoing power plants and nuclear power plants, right?
They are, yeah. And so, and that massive build out of basically call it the infrastructure and the tooling layer is in anticipation of, all these future AI workloads and solutions that are going to run on it. And I think the interesting thing that we're going to see over the next few years, and certainly what we're already seeing in the AI innovation space with all the small players, is what is the value added as a solution, as a service on top of that infrastructure layer, and how. So I think that the big players they're going to make strategic bets in terms of the additional services that they want to build, but it is going to be a really exciting, very competitive, many players and small players in the AI space who are going to be delivering custom solutions on top of that infrastructure layer. And so whether it's in Vancouver or it's here in Toronto or really anywhere else in the world, I think we're just going to see such a hotbed for innovation on AI.
I see a lot of specialty, right? A lot of very deep vertical players and very specific niches around AI. So let's talk about one of those niches for a bit. Fraud detection, security. No one likes to talk at any great length about what they're doing with AI because the bad guys could be listening to the podcast. But when you think about security issues, whether that's fraud detection, pattern recognition, AI and machine vision, where are the best use cases you're seeing today on the fraud detection, security, and LP loss prevention?
I think fraud and just general cyber risk overall is a really interesting space because it has always been a bit of an arms race. Maybe a full arms race, right?
Yeah, totally.
Any malicious actor is coming out with new and better ways to, for example, spearfish, and organizations like IBM, by the way, we have a major technology area of focus and consulting around cybersecurity. We and other organizations come out with the new technologies that are trying to detect fraudulent activity, detect cyber risks, detect any kind of malicious activity, and then obviously provide ways to mitigate that. So I do think that that's going to be an area that continues to grow. The example that that clients bring up all the time, and I think that this is a real risk, is with generative AI capabilities, are we going to have malicious actors have a much stronger toolkit? I mentioned spearphishing. Are they going to be able to, generate much better, more convincing emails to send to you and me that are going to make us think that they are impersonating our bank or they are impersonating, whichever potential target.
Particularly the nation state actors, I worry about a lot because they have tremendous resources and purpose, and they're after mayhem and whatever they're after, right?
Yeah, and I think that the thing that gives me a constant source of hope is that I also see so much innovation taking place in terms of the better tools, whether it's just general malicious activity monitoring. That's a really interesting one that I was actually with our Canadian head of cybersecurity just a couple weeks back, and he was showing like how it's possible to monitor the entire globe, and also we were kind of zooming in on Canada and individual areas within Canada for the origination of these malicious events and how you can detect those, obviously using AI and even combining AI with generative AI for higher detection. How you can provide that information, whether it's to the nations themselves, to organizations themselves, if they are the ones who are being spoofed, for example. And so I think that the arms race is going to continue. The good news is that this is something, whether it's spear phishing, whether it's obviously another interesting area of concern is being able to impersonate people through their voice print using some of these technologies. The good news, I think, is that all of these are very front and center in terms of the conversations that we're having with our clients and we as society are having. And so I think that there is a real impetus for solving these issues with technology and also obviously how we implement it.
Last question for you. So a couple of weeks ago, the baseball season finally wound up, but go Jays, I guess. But hope better luck next season. Let's get the Expos back. What inning, if you were thinking about Gen AI and the work you do in terms of baseball, what inning are we in right now?
I love that question. I think that we are probably entering the second inning, and I'll explain why. I think the first inning was all about AI assistance and using AI assistance to look into policy and procedure documentation of organizations. That was where ChatGPT kind of started. It's, Microsoft Copilot and the whole idea behind that, at least in its, initial instantiation. And the reason we started there, Michael, is because it intuitively made sense. It's an interaction pattern that we're all used to. We chat all day. And it's also something that was easy to implement because it's kind of standalone and you can just bring your documents to the source. But there are so many future trends that we're seeing that we really haven't even gotten into. There's lots of conversation about agentic workflows and little autonomous AI solutions that are working together to complete a goal and looking after each other, supervising each other. I think that that's going to be a really interesting area. We really haven't, other than policy and procedure documents, organizations haven't started bringing their data to AI yet. And that's going to unlock so many different types of capabilities. We're just really focused on language and maybe a little bit of image, but there's so many other data modalities. I mentioned time series briefly. We have a geospatial model at IBM, for example, to monitor the impact across the globe of climate events. So modality is a huge area. There are so many dimensions that we really haven't even gotten into yet. And then, of course, the generative AI models themselves are going to continue to get better. These foundation models are going to continue to get better. In some instances, they're going to get bigger. In some instances, they're going to get smaller and more specialized. So I really feel like we're just turning into the second inning. And there's so many more exciting things that are to come.
If people want to get in touch with you, are you a LinkedIn guy? How do they get a hold of you and learn more about what you're doing? Yeah,
I'm definitely on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get in touch with me. You can find me at rob.dunlap is my handle. And it'd be great to continue the conversation with whoever is interested in it.
And if they want to learn more about what IBM is up to in this space, is it ibm.ca or is there a link I could put in the show notes? Anything you'd want to call out?
Yeah, we can send across maybe a few different things. We can send across an email or a URL for IBM Consulting, as well as one for IBM generally and our AI technologies as well, and we can add those to the show notes.
Well, fantastic. Well, Rob, thanks again for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Real treat to talk to you at length, and thanks again for joining us in Vancouver, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And go Jays, right? I mean, let's...
That's right.
Let's have a better year next year. Anyway, thanks again, Rob.
Thanks, Michael, for having me on. It's been great.
Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of The Voice of Retail are available every Friday. Be sure and tell your retail friends and colleagues all about us. Be sure and check out my top US-based, award-winning Remarkable Retail podcast with a best-selling author, Steve Dennis, available wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. I'm honored to have been recently recognized as one of the top 50 retail voices by NRF in North America for 2025. As a leader in the retail industry, I'm passionate about driving innovation, shaping the future of retail, and sharing insights that help our community thrive. Be sure and check out the complete list of Retail Voices by NRF honorees, including my good friend and partner Steve Dennis, in the show notes. Thank you, NRF. And I'll see everyone in New York at the big show in January. Safe travels, everyone.